Our concern is about those who live in the community, who pay taxes in the community, whether they will have opportunities to gain employment that will enable them to work their way out of poverty.
In April 2007, many organizations concerned about expanding economic opportunity pressed hard to get agreements from the developers of the massive banks project on the Cincinnati riverfront. Their concern was not only to make sure that the bidding process was structured to allow small, often minority contractors to fairly compete, but also to qualify local poor and minority residents to be competitive for jobs on the banks. I am joined this morning by Reverend Gregory Chandler, the pastor of the World Outreach Church and the president of AMOS. AMOS is a coalition of more than 30 congregations that not only reflect the many denominational traditions of Protestantism and Catholicism, but intentionally unite predominantly white and predominantly black congregations through common work. Welcome back to Newsmakers.
Thank you for having me, Dan.
This whole issue around the banks, I mean, the people pay attention to the banks on lots of different levels, and you're paying attention to it, particularly on the impact on jobs. Where do you think we are at this point based on the agreements that you had a little bit later than that comment? The agreements came about another 6 months later, but where do you think we are?
Well, as we've been looking at the data that's been provided to us, we are not close to being where we had hoped to be when we were talking about this several years ago, because we were so far behind from the beginning. I mean, local residents, specifically minorities and those living in poverty, have been overlooked so long and have not been given the opportunities they need to work themselves out of poverty, that what we were expecting to see actually was a significant effort right out of the gate to make sure that there would be a very strong message sent to the community and some structure put in place so that individuals that wanted to gain access to these high-paying, lucrative construction jobs would have a way to get engaged, get trained, and get into the workforce. And we just don't see that that's happening right now.
One thing I want to be clear is, and I tried to do this in my setup, this isn't just about minority-owned businesses being able to get some of the contracts, but it's really, your real thrust is about people getting skills so that they can do the day-to-day jobs, right? It's job training.
Exactly, and that's where the issue always gets confusing when it's being reported on, because what you hear a lot about is a minority business inclusion, SBEs, MBEs. We're talking about people, workers, the workforce, individuals who live here, who are raising their families in this community, who have their children attending our schools, who are trying to build a life for themselves.
What was your expectation about numbers of people, percentage of the workforce? How did you think about this when the agreements were signed? And then we'll talk about where we think we are.
Well, we were hoping to see some significant percentages from within the confines of Cincinnati proper. When you look at the percentage of African Americans that live in Cincinnati and where the poverty is, we were looking to see that we would have results showing that specific areas of our community, neighborhoods, were going to be targeted so that they would be visible in the workforce in the beginning of this project.
And you mentioned that the statistics that that have been presented, where are we?
Well, we're looking now at about 6% of Cincinnati residents being included in the workforce at this point on the Banks project. Now, our data comes from a public information, a freedom of information request that we made to get the certified payroll for the Banks project through August, through about the middle of August. And that data that we looked at reflected those numbers. It showed that the majority of the workforce is coming from areas outside of Cincinnati and a significant portion from outside of the state of Ohio.
To achieve the sorts of goals that you hope for, there was going to have to be real job training. Are those processes set up? Has anybody taken steps to begin to train people, to move people into the workforce?
Well, I'll share this with you, Dan. During the process of us submitting this request for this information, we asked for information that would show and document the good faith efforts of the contractors to do outreach into the Cincinnati communities that are most affected and need these opportunities. And we were told that that data did not exist because such outreach had not even been done.
So it hasn't happened.
It has not happened.
It has. And I want to just bring up that I did a follow-up segment after we talked about this specifically with some people who had the experience at the Freedom Center. And those are exactly some of the things they did at the Freedom Center. They went out into neighborhoods and tried to get people qualified who weren't qualified, both as contractors and as workers. And, you know, but it takes that extra step. Is there any angle here that this is still the preliminary stage? We're still trying to get the garages built, and the developers who are going to develop on top, they're not doing anything yet. They're not, because the platform isn't there yet. Do you think it's going to improve when we go to the next phases of starting to build buildings there?
No, and I haven't believed that from the first time I was told that. If there was a sincere effort to make a difference and let this project be different than the other ones, there would have been significant work done towards setting up a process whereby local residents could start getting into the pipeline for training and for opportunities long before any of this started.
So what happens now? You're not happy with where things have gone. What do you do?
Well, one of the things we're doing right now is like we're doing this morning talking with you. This has to become a public discourse. This is not a private matter, and the public needs to be aware of the fact that what has been promised has not been delivered. And it needs to be communicated consistently, and we need to make sure that we get those who are involved with making decisions about how subcontractors are going to be invited to participate on this project and what they're doing in terms of following up on the agreement, that they know that we're not happy with what's being done at this point, and something specifically needs to be done to correct that right now, because if it doesn't happen now, we don't believe it's going to happen.
This is sort of a turning point, the last chance to get this going.
Exactly.
We've only got about 30 seconds.
Okay.
Do you have people you can meet with?
Yes, we have scheduled a meeting with John Dietrich, who's the Banks Project executive, and we plan to talk to him about our concerns and to see what can be done moving forward. And we hope that that will happen next.
And that's in the coming week, right?
Yes, yes, it is.
So, okay. Well, thank you very much for being here this morning, and we are going to continue to track this because the banks is important to everybody, and opening up job opportunities is important to this entire community. So, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next week when I will be joined by Dave Crowley as he faces forced retirement from Cincinnati City Council and the authors of a wonderful new booklet on Cincinnati immigration history. Have a good week.